every time when I start working on a new opera, I ask myself how this relation between text and music, how can I tell the story? What's the story? What's the libretto? And for the first time, I'm working now with a finished libretto. I asked a Russian writer Vladimir Sorokin to write a libretto, and I was struggling now summer with the finished libretto, because you feel very. If the question is always where music can add a dimension to a text not as a totality of a artwork, but as with its possibility to add another dimension, to work with the text, to work with the sound of the words, but also with the semantic, with the meaning.
So to what extent did you collaborate with your librettist prior to the writing process in order to get the sounds and the meaning that you wanted?
It was. I was just familiar with the very early works of Vladimir Sorokin, and we decided to meet in Berlin, and he asked some questions. I proposed him to write a libretto based on the idea on the film of Tarkovsky, Solaris. This was the base, and he asked me what's exactly is interesting for you in this movie. What does attract you on this? And I think I told him at that time there is a scene in the movie where you see the unknown planets, just those foggy, the movements of this unknown planet. It's a long scene. It's a black. It's a window, as I remember, a round window open to the space, and this unknown. It's something which attracted me so much, and I thought for the first time this would be the possibility for the music to represent this part. Not to represent is maybe not the right expression, but to give this dimension of the unknown.
Okay. And is this thing of having a visual stimulus for your music something that happens frequently for you?
Yes, of course there are, but it's the first work is separate in a work on the sound, on ideas, musical ideas, and parallel the work on the text, and there is a moment when they come together, and we can also the choice of the language, of course, is crucial and changes everything. And it's the first time I thought on composing in German, and of course in Pharma is also text is a text of Schnitzler, but I made it. I simplified in the way so this text is spoken and the sung text is or Latin or Italian.
Mm. So what are the specific ways in which the language of a text will affect the music that you write?
Why the German text, why I use it until now always as a spoken text. Of course, we know from Mozart to Schubert we have enough examples of sung German. I can't really answer, but it is the quality of the sound, the relation between consonants and vocals, and I never would say Italian is the language for the voice. It's just a different sound. It creates a different vocality, as we know of this rich opera culture in Italy. And in Fama, the choice of the Latin text was maybe more the wish to have something in the background, very clear vocals, and actually more an abstract language. We don't know how it was spoken, and it's still the question: do we pronounce Italian or school German? Yeah, school German Latin sounds very, very square,
right,
very abstract. Yeah.
And of course, in Fama, with multiple languages, that has implications for the structure as well, and it seems to create very different worlds.
Yes.
Is that something that you were bringing out in your choice of several texts?
Yes, exactly. So this process moving around a certain idea which is not, you can't touch it yet, but there is a certain idea, and there was the idea of this house of Fama where everything is audible, anything what happens on this world. The wonderful text of Ovid, and there was far away Schnitzler. This actually in German-speaking countries it is a very, very well-known theater work, and I really did not want to add another Fräulein Else on stage. This was not my interest, and but the language itself, this exploding, it's the language of the early 20th century. It's one of the first inner monologues, and that's what I was searching for. I was searching for personalities, for and finally I decided to cut this figure out. So this is a quite radical decision. So there are other protagonists in Fräulein Else. There is a story. There are explanations of her behavior, of course, which you don't find in Fama. But this idea helped me a lot to create first a space of where stories can happen and can the decision to cut the figure out, it means I just chosen her inner voice. Of course, she reflects anything and you get an idea of what's happening around her, but very, very reduced. I think, and that's. I thought something else, because there was a work of not the son, but the grandson of Schnitzler, and he thought about Fama. Would it be in the sense of Arthur Schnitzler, this reduction? And he found yes.
Right.
That's another story. But says how strange my voice sounds. I'm sure I have a completely different face now. And this was somehow the initial idea to voice, and the voice itself tells. And how can I come to this intimacy of the voice? It's all about identity of this person. It's not, the person is not, she's very young, she's 17 and she reflects the world, she can see anything what happens around her, and it's more projections which build step by step this person, Else. And this was the thing which interests me most. The person is not from the beginning here. There's just somebody who says, I want to go away. And finally, the camera comes always closer to her. And as I hope, this person is not anymore Else, but it is the actress. And this close up to the figure was the formal idea of how can I the idea of having a center that's her voice and come closer to this voice to build a resonance for the voice. At the end, she's really the center, and the very end, the orchestra is behind the public, so it's passed by somehow.
Can you say a bit more about how that's achieved on a technical level? Are there differences in the music that you're writing in order to achieve that change of perspective?
Yes, I didn't finish to answer your question, but that's the different languages in the, and you're right. That, I have seen that it's just one sentence of Carlo Emilio Gada. It's an utopic world. It's another world. And it's like an island in this. Actually, it's also about identity, but also about the violence. Right? And Gada, he says there must be on this world a place where only trees are communicating. He says without pain, without violence, and that's the only sentence. It's just a light on the Schnitzler text, and the text of Lucrez, the Latin text, is another light on its De Rerum Naturae. He describes a volcano, the power of this explosion, and it's another aspect of the violence.
To go back to the question of genre, and you describe Pharma as sound theatre. What do you mean by that term?
The idea that the sound itself is speaking to us, the sound of the voice. I mean, I mentioned this more ideological discussion about opera. We always think opera has to have action and drama. Yeah, that's action. Yeah, I agree, but it's, as I said, opera as an open work of art means that the listener can build the story, rebuild the story, and you will understand if you listen to the sound. So this is one of the most important aspects for me to work with, somehow to let the meaning emerge from the sound. Sometimes you hear just voices, you don't understand, and sometimes you understand one word, and this word gives a light to a very specific light to the sound. It was fascinating for me, the work together with the actress, how she was capable to express in a sense of the material, to express what she was talking about when she speaks about the glass of the mirror between the two persons, or anything. How suggestive this voice itself can be. So we have let's say 4 different situation: orchestra and voice. First, it's just a massive homogeneous sound, and which covers completely her. She has to shout to be understood. And later on, it's a mixture, perfect. The orchestra starts to play with her, to speak with her, and then in the central part, it's only contrabass, flute, and voice. This is the point zero, I would say, of the sound energy. The flute just after as an extension of her throat. And sometimes you don't know, is it the flute or is it the voice? It was the intention. That's the part where she says, how strange my voice sounds. I'm sure I have a complete different face now. I'm a different person. Yeah. This was in the box we built for this piece. It was box actually in this size. No, it was bigger, for 250 people. Yeah, it must be bigger. It doesn't exist anymore. And this box was put in a larger space, and the orchestra was outside of this box and playing in the box. And you could open all the doors and also the roof, everything. And the entrance, in this scene, the front doors were completely open, so the orchestra played in this space.
And to what extent is that staging integral to the work? Are there different ways of doing it completely?
Yes, there are different ways, but I think this space aspect is quite important, and I never thought on playing just in the orchestral pit, or I don't know. I never thought about, but the best was always in a larger. For example, a concerthouse in Vienna. That's would be the large room is ideal, or resonating, but also direct, a good acoustic, not too resonating. So the problem was, and I tried to solve that with the box, to have this central scene 6 with a very, very low energetic level of the contrabass, flute, and the voice. So this and the contrary is this big opening scene, the very compact, loud orchestral sound. How can I combine this without amplifier? And I didn't want to amplify it. Sorry?
Sorry, I just said good.
It was a decision after Begehren where I asked myself how this aspect, we think to create a space with loudspeakers, but it is not, if it is not communicating with the real space. So it's a virtual space, and I find it always difficult. I mean, it is very difficult to amplify one instrument, and without just blowing flutes to an elephant, or that's this aspect, and this was also a main problem, because theater is physicality, music as well. So we see and we listen. We see the person singing, and we believe or we believe not. So if you see you singing and I hear this, I have problems to rebuild a body that's or the body and the sound does not correlate anymore. And this is also, of course, you can work with that. That's clear. But and there is one scene, that's scene 5, where I search for a possibility to let the voice sound without seeing her, but she moves above the public. So she has a just not electronic, but just this what's that? A cone?
Yeah.
A cone? Yeah. With it's not a megaphone. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
And she's not seen, but she speaks very low, and she turns, and it's quite. It's like she wouldn't have a body anymore. It's another aspect that's scene 5.
One of the things that interests me about your use of spoken text is how often we think of spoken text as a way of increasing naturalism of vocal delivery. But sometimes it seems to me that you're going for the opposite effect. And particularly here and elsewhere in the opera, where the vocal delivery is so very quick, it seems actually every bit as stylized as singing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the strategy is there.
I think that's an important point. It means the balance between meaning and sound. Very easily the spoken language can dominate sound and make it flat but for example, at the end, when she says, "Und dann kann ich immer noch herauf," even if I decided to go down to the hotel lobby, I still can go up. If you ask me what does it mean in the opera, I can't. I can't tell you. It was just this other possibility, yeah, and this makes the text durchlässig, transparent for the sound. I think that's. And also the very end, when she says, "Who plays so beautiful piano downstairs?" There is no piano, but in the Schnitzler text, he has integrated a Schumann Novelette.
Right.
I didn't quote it, Schumann. Maybe one word again to this balance between words and sound. If you're constant, it means ambiguity actually, and that's also the work, the teamwork in the theater is that's the point. This ambiguity, each layer has to somehow be transparent for the other dimension. And if you, for a simple example, when I play with these vocals at the beginning, I always told the actress, don't act too much. You just play. You try. How does your voice react in the space? It's just a game, and it doesn't mean anything. Just well, and then there is one word. How pretty. And then you see standing in front of a mirror and talking to myself. And the meaning is step by step, it gets clear, but first we have just sounds. It's like percussive sounds and from the flute and from the voice. And this, I mean, is the transparency and somehow the of the medium. So this last example, I don't know if you have time for it. It's a completely different. It's the next work, Wüstenbuch. Wüstenbuch is another formal. It's another way to approach theater. The acting persons. Each one has his story, and each one tells his story, but there's nothing anymore between them. They're completely alone. And Lotofagos speaks about memory and about the possibility to create. We lost our memory, she says. It's a text of Ángel Valente, a Spanish writer. And Wüstenbuch is based on Ingeborg Bachmann, an Austrian writer, and a few other texts like Ángel Valente, for example. It's all about a desert and loss of memory. Desert in different ways. Deserts also as a civilization, desert of civilization. Desert as death in the Egyptian culture. Desert as tabula rasa, maybe as possibility to start, to restart. Actually, this experience with the Wüstenbuch brought me. I would like to continue the research which I did with spoken language, also analyzing spoken language in different ways, but to do it with the sung voice, and a way to create different resonances, or to create the spectrum of the voice. And of course, as you heard, this is not an opera singer. She is not. She's more kind of pop voice, very flat. But that's also nice here. That's
and with that clarity of tone.
Yeah. So she has a flat, and sometimes, but she creates different colors, and it must be also. We speak quite often, composers, about different qualities of voices. What should we do with trained opera voices? But I still believe it's possible to work also with opera, with singers, trained singers.
Given the way that your texts, and you talked about the sound of the text an awful lot and the correspondence between instrumental sound and text, how much do you say to your librettist, or perhaps your librettist says to you, I have these particular sounds in mind, you should put these sounds into your text, or the librettist says, this might be a way that you might want to think about this particular section?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's difficult because I just this time I asked the writer. I told him I would prefer a not a very stylized. I don't want a composition from here. I just I would like to have a common language, quite daily. How could I say it in English? Everyday language. Don't all the work with repetitions, or I don't need that. That's the work I'll do. And I had exactly this problem when I have written Pharma. I had exactly a sound in my mind of a text, and I didn't find the text of the first scene for the choir. It was the choir that they are speaking. Yeah, they are singing Lucrez, but they are speaking a German text, and I didn't find it. But I somehow knew exactly what I wanted to have, and finally I had to. That's the only situation where I had to write the text myself.
Oh.
But it was a simple trick. It's all sentences with "I hear this," "I hear that," "I hear that." Yeah. Sometimes, and that's what I mean with sometimes your musical imagination is already one step further, and then you research, and then the synchronization is also somehow important. In Pharma, there is the second scene. I intended to create in the orchestra a sort of speaking orchestra. The orchestra is speaking with one voice, with a strange alien voice. I just imagine a certain sound quality, and in Wüstenbuch I analyzed, because I was interested in the harmonic processes. What's going on here when I'm speaking? It's going up. It's very complex, so you can stretch that and see how harmonically what's happening, and that's what I did in Wüstenbuch. I reconstructed this spoken voice. It was my voice, and it was very interesting that the idea of having a relation between expressivity and sound. Well, what happens if I if I talk with more impact, or if and of course it happens something in harmonic. So the overtones they shift, and so these things I found in Wüstenbuch, but it was the consequence of Pharma actually, where I wanted to have that. And
cool.
There was one thing which struck me about the duet between the contrabass flute and the voice, is that the contrabass flute almost sounded like a cello. It almost had a different type of articulation quality. And I was wondering how you follow those type of links from instrument to instrument and instrument to voice.
Yeah. Of course, the contrabass flute is an instrument on the limit. It's almost no more instrument but it has a fantastic mechanic. It works fantastically, and it's extremely rich in the sense of colors. But the richness is only audible. If the distance is not too long. Of course, this was the main interest to create this connection, sound and voice. Otherwise, the relation would be an illustrative, more as a narrator, makes the music illustrating what he, and this is if you create steps between, if you understand the sound qualities and if you bring them closer, then you create a completely different, not a melodramatic relation.